So fantastic. Yeah, we can't.
Was it so that I know?
It's I haven't been able to figure it out yet. Yeah, I have not figured it out yet.
Usually it's just a simple correction.
Good. All right, good morning. Time to get started. There we go. I always forget if it's 9 or 9:05, but it's 10:05, isn't it? It's 10:05 and 9. Okay. 9 and 10:05. 9 and 10:05. I have to write that down. All right, good morning. We're going to continue our study in Genesis. We got through, we talked about Hagar, chapter 16, got into a little bit of 17, but I actually want to do some review. We actually had good discussion, if you can believe it, around circumcision. I kind of want to review that just a little bit, just because it's such a, maybe a little bit of a peculiar thing, but I'd like to get some additional input from you guys and just review that this morning. Mr. John Odom, can I get you to open us with a word of prayer?
Father in heaven, as we come before you on this beautiful morning that you've blessed us with, we just want to
pray to you this time that we can just, Jesse will help us through, and obviously you will be speaking through him, Father, and we just pray that we can just gain more knowledge of the book of Genesis and just what your expectations are of what you want us to do with our lives, Father. Just help us to let our light shine to others around us. We want to pray for those who won't be able to make it today, Father, whether that would be illness or perhaps work-related, whatever the case may be. Father, we just pray that you are watching over them and comforting them while they're away from the church at this particular time. We thank you so much, Father. We just pray all this in your precious Son's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Okay. So in 16, we looked at the story of Hagar. I want to just quickly recall that story. So as you guys know, God had promised Sarai and Abram a descendant. And I think we talked about, was it 13 years that she was waiting? And at some point she was like, okay, this is this is not going to happen. Here is my servant, concubine, if you will. I did a little research. It wasn't super uncommon. It's a strange practice for sure, but it wasn't uncommon at that time and in that culture to do that. But anyway, Hagar becomes pregnant, and Sarai doesn't like it and starts treating her terribly. And what struck me was some of the details that I had kind of maybe overlooked in the past. You have Hagar, who is pregnant and being abused, neglected, however you want to call it, having to run away. Now imagine a pregnant woman with no one to protect or provide, running out into the wilderness. At that point, you have nothing left, right? And God visits her in the wilderness. And I love how he asks her, where are you coming from? Where are you going? Right? We saw that before. We saw that him asking that of Satan and Job. We see that him kind of asking that of Adam and Eve. And I love that. There's just something very paternal about that, something gentle, if you will. And she, of course, explains her situation. Of course, God knows. And in 11 and 12 of 16, the angel of the Lord said to her, you are now pregnant and are about to give birth to a son. You are to name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard your painful groans. He will be a wild donkey of a man. He will be hostile to everyone, and everyone will be hostile to him. He will live away from his brothers. So he tells her to return and to submit. And I'm sure that was very difficult, but she does, and she is blessed for it. So this was really incredible, just kind of like looking at these details again. And we also kind of called out the fact that God knew exactly who Ishmael was, knew what his life was going to be like, knew what his personality was going to be like, knew all of the details. And I found that just so interesting. I think Jeremiah, when God says, I knew you. Before I even formed you in the womb, I knew who you were. I love that. There's something really incredible about that intimate knowledge that God has about us, and that he knows us better than we actually know ourselves. Okay. So real quickly, just a few review questions. What was the promise, once again, given to Hagar through Ishmael?
Multiply the offspring, so many they can't be numbered.
Okay. Sounds a little bit like the promise given to Abram, right? And so Abram, in God's plan, fulfilling the concept of being a father of many nations, would not only have nations through Isaac, but also nations through Ishmael. Very interesting. And so we kind of touched a little bit last time in class. Even though Ishmael wasn't a part of the lineage, wasn't a part of the direction of the Messiah, still a part and still in view of God's grace and loving kindness. John?
It also talks about the conflict between Ishmael and the rest of the place.
Yeah, yeah. He would be hostile to others, and others would be hostile to him. And it said he would live away from his brothers. And we're going to find out later that Ishmael or Hagar would give birth to 9, or maybe it was Ishmael that would have 12 sons, 12 princes. I can't recall off the top of my head, but it's another 12, which is once again very interesting. Yes. I love that Hagar kind of named the Lord, the God who sees me. I thought that was really interesting. I mean, just once again, I just remember, having to leave because things weren't great. But then when you put on top of that, pregnant and alone and in the wilderness, that just amplifies that story so much. Okay, yeah.
I think she's the first person to give God a name.
I thought that was so interesting. The way that I took this, and I could be wrong, but as an Egyptian slave, obviously she knew who God was, but this was I don't know. It feels like when God renames people, right? It's significant. And this touched her so much that there was this intimate connection. And once again, I feel like naming for me is one of those things. I just love the concept of when God, we'll see it with Abram and Sarai and others, obviously. But that name is significant. I remember someone did a study on, I think it was like the 8 names of Yahweh in the Old Testament: healer, compassionate, sovereign, all those things. And here we see the God who sees me. So the other thing and he said, you're going to name your son this name. And to me, that was a thing, like his entire life, she would always remember. Obviously, I don't think she would ever forget, but it's all kind of consolidated into the name of this child, right? Really, really interesting. So, interesting fact, could be the first time that someone gives God a name, and I didn't know if that's because maybe she didn't know or didn't want to say Yahweh, or if it was maybe she wasn't as familiar. I don't know.
Well, she's Egyptian, and I always think of them, like, they had a lot of
Yeah.
gods, right? Like,
Yes.
they had their sun god, and they had
Yeah.
all their different gods, and so I wonder if it's that for her, if this is another god for her.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I do too.
This is very personal, what she does name him, the
Yeah.
God who sees me, is so much more personal than the sun god.
Yes. Yeah, who sees me, right? There is that very personal, deep connection. I love that. I really thought that was a neat part of that story as well. Brad?
Yeah, and the other 2 things that kind of stand out to me is that this is the God who sees and hears, right?
Mhm.
So Ishmael is God
Yeah.
hears.
Yes.
She names God, God sees. So this sets this God apart from the other gods. This one, like others, I pray, I do all these things, and they don't seem to hear or see me. Nothing changes. But this God, when I cried out, this is the one that heard me and saw me.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is also the God of Abraham and Sarah, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a God of all people, not just one nationality, not just one class of citizen. Like the masters and the servants, have the same God, and it's a God who sees and hears.
I think for me that kind of sheds a lot of light on, we often talk about how God would base maybe some of his interactions as a counter to what was happening culturally at the time, right? And I think about that a lot because, I mean, you can take a look at America and go, wow, we've really kind of strayed. God has always been intertwined in our history, like pretty deeply. Right? Like you get significant numbers of people in America that are like, yeah, I believe in God, whether or not, you know what I mean? Like Yahweh God. Imagine if he was one of 100 culturally, and that's just how you grew up. And picking this God over another God, well, everyone does that. You've just picked that one, and I've just picked that one. Right? And so to your point, like this would be, if this was the case where she's like, well, I was raised to know many gods, but this is the God who hears and sees me. I think that that's pretty interesting. I feel like I take that for granted a little bit as to what it might be like to grow up in a culture where it's like, oh, of course, you got your God, I got my God. And we see that on maybe an abstract level today, but that's kind of neat. Very good. Then we went into 17, and the beginning of 17, when Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am the sovereign God. Walk before me and be blameless. Then I will confirm my covenant between me and you, and I will give you a multitude of descendants. Now, this is where he outlines the sign of the covenant, and that sign is circumcision. And we asked the question, why do you think that this particular sign was used? When you first think about what circumcision is, you're like, that's such a peculiar way to seal a covenant. We said a couple things and had some good conversation after class too, and I kind of just want to revisit that. What do you think? Why do you think this? What were some of the characteristics of it? It had to be the 8th day. Know that. Alan was telling me afterwards that it's not until the 8th day that I think it's vitamin K that is now present enough in the body for you to clot properly. So vitamin K is responsible for allowing to clot. So I thought that, because there is a lot of significance around numbers, and 7, why not 7? So, that's God, right? But anyway, what else? What do you think about the sign of circumcision? Give me just some abstract thoughts about why you think that would have been chosen. I'll start it out. It's permanent. Okay? Can't ever go back. Like there was the concept of if you were a slave, you might get your ear pierced or something like that. This is permanent. What else?
It kind of goes in line with the promise that Abraham would be very fruitful.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So reproductive organ,
yes.
One that is
yes.
affected by this sign of the covenant that God is going to make you into a huge nation and actually going to bless all people of the world through your offspring.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's how you produce offspring that is impacted.
I really like that, and I think that there's part of me that looks at this in maybe a childish, immature way, and what God looks at as a very serious, divine quality of creating life, right? Like, I think we have just been so over-sexualized in our culture that so many problems happen because of that. But even when you think of, Noah, was it Noah that was uncovered, right? And like, how shameful that was, and them being uncovered in the garden, and how shameful that was. And this is almost like, in a weird way, if we're in the image of God, to be on display like that, when we have the knowledge of good and evil, God wanted to cover that up. Does that make sense? Like, there was supposed to be a shame in that. And so I think there's such a serious and divine part of producing life and what's responsible for producing life that maybe sometimes I take it a little bit too immaturely. And so I might think, oh, what a weird sign, but this is how God thinks, to be able to, and we've talked about it before, but the ability to create life was, as far as what I see in the Bible, is exclusive to man and woman, and not done in any other, like spiritual creatures like angels or anything like that. So I think that's one of them. Yeah, Brad.
It's also interesting that it was on the 8th day and not like the 13th year.
Right.
Or, a semblance of going into adulthood or something.
Right, like a rites of passage, or yeah.
So it's interesting that from birth, practically,
Mm-hmm.
You were marked as
You were,
part of
yes.
the community.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Part of the faith community.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but you were set apart, literally from the beginning. I
And
think,
as much as
yeah.
we like push back against this idea of, being, the infant baptism, and all of that, like here, this was a sign that was like, you didn't have a choice. This wasn't like,
Right.
hey, if once you can take your faith as your own, then you should be circumcised. This was, no, you were on the 8th day, regardless of consent. There was no consent there, right?
Yeah.
So
You were part of this group. Yep, and very good. Yes.
And I like the wording in verse 10. It says you shall be. It's not like a demanding you must be or a request of like you should or you could, but it's you shall.
Yes.
Something that will happen. This is my instruction. It will be respected.
Read that for me real quick. Read that verse.
Um,
Did you say 9?
10.
10.
This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you and your offspring after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised.
Yeah, very good. And then this is a deeper part of it too. Is have you ever? Boy, I don't know if this happens anymore, but when you pinky swear, right? Like it's like, this is a deep covenant, and God can't break His promise. We can, but God can't, right? And so this is an agreement between you and I. You do this and you stay in my covenant. So it's a commitment too, all right? Like think about like it's irreversible. It has to do with procreation. It is a commitment. There's no going back. It's a visual identifier. There's all of these things that start to kind of go, oh, okay. Now I can kind of see why God did this. This is a very interesting but very maybe deeply symbolic thing. Yeah.
There's also quite a bit of trust being put in here.
Okay.
This makes them vulnerable.
Yes.
And
yes.
I don't have my phone to flip.
Yeah.
There was a story where they all got circumcised and then they were vulnerable to the enemy.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Completely forgetting that story.
Yes.
So there's definitely some trust there needed in God.
Very, very true, right? Like especially as you look later, and Abram immediately does this with his household and his servants, and yeah, there is. So it's a commitment, it's a vulnerability, and very good. Okay, let's see here.
Just one more thing.
Yes.
On the 8th day, that the 8th is just kind of metaphoric in that like there are 7 notes in like a scale, but then the 8th one is like that resolving note. You never want to stop on the 7th. You want to go all the way to the 8th.
I love that. And I think this is like, we talk about like numerology, and stuff, and it's like it feels a little, but there's just so many patterns in creation that point to the patterns that we see of God. And that's why I think like we're just this 2-dimensional diluted version of what heaven is actually like. Like I used to think it's so far away and it's just this spiritual where you can move through walls and stuff. But I think it's like we're just this really flat copy of what heaven is really like. Like that's the true dimension, right? And we're kind of like the diluted version of it. So, but because of that, because God made us, there are so many rhythms and cycles and that kind of thing. So very good. All right. Also, in the beginning of 17, we see that Abram's name has been changed to Abraham. As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer will your name be Abram. Instead, your name will be Abraham, because I will make you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you extremely fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will descend from you. I will confirm my covenant as a perpetual covenant between me and you. It will extend to your descendants after you throughout their generations. I will be your God and the God of your descendants after you. I will give the whole land of Canaan, the land where you are now residing, to you and your descendants after you as a permanent possession. I will be their God. So His name changes from exalted Father to Father of a multitude, or Father of multitudes. And so when we see in John where Jesus says, who's your father? Their concept, even then, was Abraham is our father, right? Because this is where the nation and the ocean of the Jews began, if you will. All right, let's see, do I have any? Can I get someone to read 15 down through 18? Yes, thank you.
And God said to Abraham, as for Sarah, your wife, you shall not call her Sarah, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall become nations. Kings of peoples shall come from her. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said to himself, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. But God said, no, Sarah, your wife, shall bear your son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him, everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear out to you next year.
Okay. Go one more. Go 22, yep.
When he finished talking with him, God said, and went up from Abraham.
Okay, very good. So, what do we see here? First highlights.
Sarai also gets a new name.
Okay.
A new identity.
Very good. Once again, I love this. It marks an intimacy, an intimate knowledge with God, and it really marks a new kind of phase in your life, right? Like a new direction, a new purpose, which comes with a new identity, Mike.
Something struck me as I was reading this. God speaking to him, telling him all these things, and then he falls on his face and laughs about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like,
Oh, I guess I hadn't really thought about this. It's really good because it's a little performative, isn't it?
yes.
Right? Yeah, yeah. That's good. Kind of like bowing down and then going, well, oh, it's a cool covenant, but is this possible? Right? Yeah, very good. I do that. I do. I think we're all at least prone to it. And I think that's the interesting part because we'll see in the next chapter this happens to Sarah as well. But even our thoughts, right? Even what we think is hidden from everyone else can be viewed and heard and seen by God.
I think it shows us that when we struggle with faith or struggle to choose a path, that the people that literally spoke to God struggled with it.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah,
God understands.
yeah,
And he has grace and he has love and he's willing to walk there with us because, I mean, Abraham fell down and laughed.
Yeah.
After God made all these promises to
Mhm.
him, and then Abraham's like, yeah, right, are you kidding me?
yeah.
And God let him have his human moment and he kept going.
I think that's why I think about when God is like, where are you coming from? Where are you going? You know, giving you a moment to kind of internalize, but also like talk about where you're at. And I think in myself too, there's these like hidden moments of like, I don't know, is this real? Is this real? You know, and I mean, I think about kind of in this life where faith is a requirement. But even here, even being face to face with God, faith was still required, right? It was still a requirement to trust that he would do whatever he said he would do. Very good. What else?
it really tries to convince God to just use Ishmael.
Mhm.
And I do this sometimes. What I know is maybe better, like the monster you know is better than the monster you don't know.
Whew.
Like, let's just go, I'm familiar with this path, we can just make this work.
Yes. Boy, that one hits pretty hard. Sarai did that too, because she was like, I trust you, God, but it's been 13 years. What about Hagar? This will work, right? Man, I think for me, one of the most difficult things is knowing where to draw that line between being a steward and making the right choice and also leaning on my trust with God, right? Anyone else have that?
I think God brings a validity to what he does in a way that, humans cannot, right? And so he's using, Sarah, who to the human eye scoffs at the idea of what's happening, and yet God makes the impossible possible. And so I think that's just one of those things where he shows his investment by not making some just common handshake promise, but he goes, I will go to these lengths to just continually prove to you that I am God and that I will follow through with what I say. And so the possible, the impossible with me becomes possible. And just constantly giving that to us as comfort, as faith, as belief. Although we, as humans, fight that.
Yeah.
This is just no common, hey, let's make a deal.
Right.
This
Right.
is me going, no, I'm going to show you far above and beyond how serious I am about this.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me think of like drawing that line as like I'm asked to be able to operate in what is possible and then have trust that the impossible can occur. It can occur through God, and that is the faith. Kim, and then Jace.
I was just gonna say, but also in his mercy,
Yeah.
he uses Ishmael. He still
Mhm.
blesses Ishmael.
Mhm.
Now, that's not gonna turn out great later,
Right.
but for Sarah and Abraham, he's still blessing that even though they took their own path and they did their own thing. So I think it shows us that God uses us and can use whatever we do to make his plan work. So,
Yeah.
still bless them in a way.
I remember having a conversation with Brett. Brad, I'm going to call you out a little bit. But we were having a great conversation. He said, everyone's weakness has a backhanded strength. And everyone's strength kind of has maybe a chink or a backhanded weakness. And I think of Paul, who God took this individual that was vehemently opposing him and imprisoning his people and kicking against the goads. And he's like, you got a lot of drive. I'm going to use that drive. I'm going to turn that around for the glory of God. I can see that. Jace?
Yeah, I was just, maybe it might be kind of raising this point, but just his statement of that Ishmael might live before you. It just, I find it relatable, and maybe what I'm feeling from him is there's a fear of disappointment, and that it matches with the faith side, right? Do you have enough faith that you're saying, yes, I trust you, you're going to provide another offspring, even though we're super old, you can overcome these physical limitations, but then there's also I at least know that I have Ishmael, so just use him.
Right.
Because if you don't, then I fear that because of our age, you won't be able to follow through, or some of those, I trust you, but this hurts.
Yes.
I'm still gonna feel that angst and that anxiety while I'm waiting in my I'm sitting here in my faith for however long it takes for this to happen, right?
The monster you know versus the monster you don't know, and just the waiting is so difficult. So difficult. And I'm convinced that that's probably, I mean, I'm probably last to come to this conclusion, but that is a core essence of faith, is sometimes just waiting. And that feels weird at a time when you feel like you should be doing things to push things forward. And I've got these blessings and I got to, and sometimes waiting is the most important thing that you can do. Oh, that is so uncomfortable. It is for me. I don't know about anyone else, but that's so difficult. That might be one of the hardest things to do because of that monster you don't know. And just waiting, and we see him say it so many times. You might have to wait. And in Hebrews, when it's talking about people that were lauded for their faith, Abraham was one of them who didn't really get to see the end of all of these promises. He lived his whole life not seeing the fulfillment of these things. But he accepted them because he was willing to wait and to trust. Very good.
So
Yeah.
he was not given zero evidence.
100%. Yeah.
Because he was living, right? So it's like, what do you choose to focus on, right? Well,
Yeah.
I didn't see the end result, so therefore it must not be.
Right.
Or we could just look for God in all the things throughout our lives and go, I know that promise exists because he's lived that every single day. I have every reason to trust that that promise will continue whether I'm here or not because of who God is and who he proves himself to be.
I love that because I think of Peter walking on the water, right? And he had all the evidence that he needed to go, wow, this impossible thing is happening right now. I'm living it. And the distraction can be so quick and we're so bombarded by it. To your point, it makes me think about when you're looking for evidence of God, you're going to find it. If you're looking, you're going to find it. But if you get distracted and stop looking and let that mortal mind kind of overshadow the voice of the Spirit, for sure, this is what can happen. I like that. Very good. All right, Brad.
Have we talked about Isaac and his name yet?
Not yet.
Kind of zoned out.
No.
So he says, I'm going to establish my covenant with Isaac, which means he laughs, right? So I'm not real sure if this is God's sense of humor or a little bit of sarcasm, God's sense of sarcasm, or irony, or just throwing it in Abraham and Sarah's face. But there is, that's just really interesting that actually I'm going to give you a son, and tell you what, you're going to call him, he laughs, because you're laughing now. I want to remind you that you laughed, you scoffed, you were skeptical of my promise, and I'm going to remind you that the rest of your life, every time you see Isaac, you're going to remember you laughed when I made this promise, but I'm going to make good on this. So I think that's just interesting to see a little bit of the character of God coming out in the name of Isaac. So have you guys ever gone through something and while you were in it, you were just like, it was just unbearable? Or maybe you were working through something and then later as you look back and you kind of maybe laugh at yourself a little bit or even smirk at yourself a little bit. And in a way, it's a good reminder. And I kind of look at it like this. I do think God's like, you laughed and we're going to mark the occasion. And I don't think he's like, heh, heh, heh. But I think he's like, when you get, down the road and you'll look back and you go, I did. And I was wrong. And I don't think it's punitive, but I do think God wanted to remind them of that. And so I think in a way, it's a level of intimacy, if you will. And even the things that we're reminded of, I think at some point, hopefully as our relationship grows with God, we look back and we kind of laugh at ourselves a little bit. Man, that was so tough at the time. I was going through it, it was so difficult. And now look where God has led me.
Well, he also just really personifies his promise.
Yes.
Because before it was very vague, like, I'm still going to establish.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Through Sarah.
Yeah.
And it was just very vague. There was no time stamp given. And now he names him. And he says, I will establish my covenant
Yeah,
with
with
Isaac.
Isaac. Yeah, it's here. It's right now. Yes. Yeah. That's I hadn't thought of that. That's good. And all of the things surrounding, like his name, the time, here it comes. This is it. You've waited. Here's the covenant, and it's coming through Isaac. Yeah, very good. Jace, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just like on the thought of Cole saying, the faith isn't blind, right? Like there are evidences that Abraham was given along the way, and Brad's point, like, well, maybe that was, here's a solid reminder, like when you think about
Yes.
the doubts you had, or the
Yeah.
fears you had that I was going to follow through, like the name of your son is gonna be one of those reminders.
Yeah.
And then part of it's like, yes, like a correction, but part
Yeah.
of it's like, hey.
It's a promise.
It's a trust.
Yes. Yeah.
This is part of the promise. It's a reminder.
I love that. We talked a little bit about naming last time, and it's like, nowadays we name like just what's the coolest name you can think of, and I get it. Like we kind of did that. It was like Jesse, Jen, Jade, and then Seraphina, and people are like, what? It's an Indiana tradition that you name all of your kids with the same first letter. Like that's just here there's such significance, and it's so much identity is really wrapped up in naming at this time, even with God. And this is why I love the concept, because to me it's a divine quality. When God names something, it means he has total full knowledge and an intimate connection with that. Okay, let me close out chapter 17. Abraham took his son Ishmael and every male in his household, whether born in his house or bought with money, and circumcised them on the very same day, just as God had told him to do. Now Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised. His son Ishmael was 13 years old when he was circumcised. Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised on the very same day. All of the men of his household, whether born in his house or bought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with him. We kind of got some repetition here, some emphasis, if you will. And what is it emphasizing?
That he went and followed. He did what he was told.
He did what he was told. And I get the sense that Abraham has that kind of mentality. When he's told something, he usually just goes ahead and does it. I wish I had that. I don't. I like to think about things, and then I like to overthink about them, and then underthink about them, and then maybe go back and think about them a little bit more. But I love this about Abraham, because he's like, come on, let's go, everyone, let's. And they say it several times. That day, all of them. That day, all of them got circumcised. And I think that is a really good quality, like once again, that I kind of wish I had a bit more of. But the scriptures calls this out, and I think for emphasis that Abraham obeyed. He obeyed. And it tends to be, I feel like there's a pattern of, even though Abraham maybe kind of questioned him a little in his heart, he still did it. Now, obviously, we know that behavior kind of proceeds from the heart. So his loyalty to God even overshadowed that. Is this real? Is this going to happen? Kind of thing. But I think a pattern that I see is when people just, yes, I'll do it. That is like the heart that God is looking for. Yep, I'll do it. Yep.
I think that falls right in line with everything about Sarah, Abraham, Abram, and the promises made, that we only know in part. We
Yes,
don't know
yes,
the complete picture.
yes.
And our job is to be faithful, not knowing the full picture.
Yeah.
And understanding that God's promise, and He is who He is, and He's good on His promise, to have that faith to go ahead and go forth like Abraham did. So, okay, that's strong. That is faith.
super strong.
Great.
Yeah.
That's why he went down the annals of
Yeah.
faith. He was faithful to God.
That's a really, really good call out. I mean, maybe you can't understate it, but when I go to God in prayer, I mean, there are some pretty selfish elements, right, in my prayer, and God understands, like, we're coming to Him, and sometimes out of desperation. I remember when we were about to move from Georgia up to Indiana, and we let the congregation know, and they're like, well, we're going to pray that you don't. So, You know, and it's like you've got these things where God is looking at the whole, and it's one of the reasons why I love the vision of how the body is knit together, because that's what God is paying attention to, the body. And yes, he cares for you individually. He knows you individually, but he's also caring for the body collectively and wanting the body to grow together. A lot of times, I've come to the conclusion that if you're struggling with something in your life that you need help with or that you need to overcome, this is me saying it, I believe God wants to solve that problem through other brethren and other members of his body rather than just snapping his finger and fixing your problem. There's so much more value in you helping me and me helping you for the collective body than just God kind of being a vending machine. And I've experienced that here a lot. And that's kind of why I came to that conclusion. Thank you guys so much. We did a clean break, chapter 18 on Wednesday. Thank you guys for your comments.
Yeah,